What happened inside that stadium when Coco Gauff stepped onto the court against Mertens is a story about power, the kind of power that cannot be bought, cannot be manufactured, and absolutely cannot be stopped. It is the story of a fan base that showed up for someone who was not even playing, turned a stadium inside out with pure passion, and in doing so sent a message to the entire tennis world that something fundamental has changed, something has shifted, and one woman in particular felt that shift in her bones and did not like what it meant for her future. We are talking about the look on Aryna Sabalenka's face. We are talking about the instant, unmistakable, cameras don't lie regret of a champion who built her empire on the assumption that nobody was coming. Spoiler alert, they are coming, and they are loud. Buckle up because this one is going to take you through every single layer of what went down. The fan takeover, the Gauff acknowledgement, the Eala press conference quote that set the internet on fire, the Sabalenka situation, and the deeper story of a partnership forming between two players that may redefine women's tennis for the next decade. By the time we are done, you are going to understand exactly why what looks like a heartwarming fan moment on the surface is actually the opening chapter of a seismic shift in the sport. Let's go. Let's start with the match itself, because context is everything, and the atmosphere inside that stadium did not come from nowhere. Coco Gauff was facing Elise Mertens in what was on paper a competitive but manageable contest for someone of Gauff's caliber and recent form. Mertens is no pushover. She is experienced, crafty, and has an unnerving ability to keep points alive long enough to make her opponent doubt herself. This was not going to be a stroll. Gauff knew it. The crowd knew it. And the crowd, as it turned out, had no intention of letting it become a struggle. Because somewhere in those stands, a decision had been made, a collective, unspoken, entirely organic decision by hundreds of Gauff-Eala fans who had come to this tournament to support their player, their champion, their pride of the Philippines, and who were not about to sit on their hands just because Eala's match had concluded. These fans did not come to sit quietly and watch politely. They came to make noise. They came to fill a stadium with energy. And when Coco Gauff walked out onto that court, they transferred every ounce of that energy directly onto her shoulders in the most generous and electrifying way imaginable. Every winner Gauff hit, they erupted. Every first serve that found the line, they roared. Every exchange she won, every rally she closed out, every moment where she dug deep and produced something special, the Eala faithful were on their feet, voices at full volume, making sure she felt supported at every single turn. The atmosphere was not just good, it was extraordinary. It was the kind of atmosphere that transforms a tennis match into something that feels bigger than itself, something that pulls you in even if you came with no particular allegiance and leaves you emotionally invested in an outcome you never expected to care about. And here is the thing about atmosphere that casual fans sometimes underestimate. It matters. It matters tactically. It matters psychologically. And it matters in the moments when a match is perfectly balanced on a knife's edge and the player who feels more supported is the one who finds something extra. The energy in that building when the Eala fans were in full voice was a genuine, tangible, competitive factor. It pushed Gauff forward. It rattled the opponent. It shifted momentum in the moments that counted. And when Gauff walked away with the win against Mertens, she knew exactly where a significant piece of that victory had come from. She did not waste a single second. The moment the match ended and Gauff approached the crowd for her post-match acknowledgement, she looked directly into the stands, found the section that had been loudest, most passionate, and most relentless in their support, and she spoke with genuine warmth and unmistakable authenticity. She said if she was not mistaken, some of them had been cheering for her, and she wanted them to know she appreciated it. Not a rehearsed corporate thank you, not the kind of polite acknowledgement that players give because the occasion demands it. This was real, personal, and direct. She saw them, she felt them, and she was grateful. But Coco Gauff did not stop there because Coco Gauff never does just the minimum when she has something worth saying. She went a step further and acknowledged something that carries far more weight than a simple expression of gratitude. She acknowledged that the stardom surrounding Gauff-Eala is absolutely real. Think about what it means when a player of Coco Gauff's stature, a Grand Slam champion, a multiple-time title winner, a player who has competed at the absolute peak of women's tennis for years, when that player looks at a 20-year-old from the Philippines and says, yes, this person has built something special. This person commands a following that fills stadiums and creates atmosphere. That is validation of the highest possible order. It is not a compliment between peers, it is a declaration to the entire sport. Gauff-Eala has arrived, and the proof is not just in the rankings. It is in the rooms she occupies and the energy that follows her into every single one of them. She and Eala even made a joint video together, standing side by side, the two of them addressing the fans directly. Gauff said she was super happy to be playing alongside Alex and encouraged the fans to keep the support going. Alex echoed every word of it. Two of the most compelling personalities in women's tennis, shoulder to shoulder, speaking to a fan base with the ease of people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. That footage traveled across the internet at the speed of light. Fan accounts exploded, comment sections filled up within minutes, because this was not staged content. This was two young women who happened to like each other, happened to respect each other deeply, and happened to be building something that the sport has not seen in a very long time. And then came the press conference. If Gauff's courtside acknowledgement lit a match, then Gauff-Eala's press conference poured an entire can of fuel on it. She stood in front of the media, no notes, no prepared statement, just herself and a microphone, and the kind of calm confidence that you either have or you do not. And she said it plainly. She said there is no bigger opportunity in her career right now than the chance to face Coco Gauff herself on the court in a competition of this magnitude. She called it a dream come true. She described the opportunity to play against someone like Gauff as the kind of thing that an athlete would do anything for, the kind of matchup that players at every level fantasize about for their entire careers. Now, before anything else, let that framing sink in for a moment. She is not saying she hopes to avoid Gauff. She is not saying she is nervous about the possibility. She is saying she cannot imagine anything better than getting the chance to compete against the best. That is not a talking point. That is a mentality. That is the exact mindset that separates players who peak in their 20s and quietly fade from players who are still competing for majors in their late 20s and early 30s, still hungry, still dangerous, still genuinely excited by the challenge that the biggest opponents represent. Gauff-Eala is not here to survive the draw. She is here to embrace it. She also said something that perfectly captured where she is mentally as a competitor right now. She said that win or lose, facing a player like Gauff is something she wants to learn from. That combination of competitive desire and intellectual humility, I want to beat you, and if I do not, I am going to learn everything I can from the experience, is extraordinarily rare, especially in someone this young. Most players at this stage of development are either purely result-oriented, which tends to make them brittle, or so focused on development that they lack the competitive edge to close out big matches. Eala has found the balance. She wants the win, and she knows how to grow from the loss. That is a champion's equation. Win or lose tomorrow, I think it is great for me to learn. Obviously, facing a player like Coco is something people would kill to do. Those are her words. And every serious observer of this sport heard them and understood exactly what they mean. This young woman is not intimidated by the summit. She is climbing toward it with everything she has, and she is enjoying every step of the ascent. Now, we need to talk about the part of this story that has a very different emotional temperature, because while Gauff and Eala were creating genuine warmth and connection and filling stadiums with joy, someone else was watching all of this unfold with a very different set of feelings, and that person is Aryna Sabalenka. Let us be precise and fair here, because this is an important conversation to have with nuance. Sabalenka is one of the greatest players of her generation. Her record speaks for itself. Multiple Grand Slam titles, extended time at world number 1. A power game that has dismantled opponents across every surface and every condition the sport can produce. She built her dominance through relentless work, uncompromising competitiveness, and an absolute refusal to be moved by anything or anyone in her way. Nobody takes that away from her. The trophies are real. The achievement is genuine. But here is the thing about dominance. It is a position, not a permanent state. And right now, the position is being pressured from multiple directions simultaneously, in ways that are new, persistent, and growing more significant with each passing tournament. Gauff is not going anywhere. She is getting better, building her game, adding weapons, and stacking experience at every level of the sport. And now, Eala is entering the conversation. world number 40, climbing, backed by a fan base that turns neutral venues into home courts, carrying a momentum and a narrative that captures the imagination of the entire sport. The landscape that Sabalenka built her identity on, the landscape where she was the unstoppable force, the one everyone else had to measure themselves against, that landscape is shifting, and that shift is being felt. You could see it in her face when the cameras found her during a tournament where the conversations kept circling back to Gauff-Eala and what they were building together. That expression, the jaw tight, the eyes slightly narrowed, the energy of someone recalculating his triumph, is the expression of a champion who knows, at the deepest level, that the era of unchallenged dominance is being contested. The challengers are not just theoretical anymore. They are here, they are loud, and their fans are taking over stadiums. The instant regret is not about one match or one moment. It is about a realization that the bonds being built between players like Gauff and Eala, the community being formed, the momentum being generated, creates something that is very difficult to compete against individually. When two players push each other, share knowledge, build each other up, and arrive at tournaments backed by a unified wave of fan energy, the isolated champion finds herself not just facing opponents but facing movements, and movements are harder to defeat than opponents. Let us spend some time on the partnership between Eala and Gauff because it is genuinely one of the most fascinating dynamics in women's tennis right now, and it deserves more than a passing mention. This did not start in the last few weeks. The roots of this connection go back to the Australian Open, where Gauff was not just competing alongside Eala, but actively investing in her development. She was offering tips, sharing insights, breaking down the technical details that she has accumulated from years of competing against the absolute best the WTA has to offer. She was working with Eala on the mechanics of the serve, walking her through the nuances that separate a good delivery from a great one, the kind of granular technical detail that only becomes visible once you have faced enough top players to understand what the difference actually costs you in a real match. And Eala was not a passive recipient. She was asking questions, experimenting in real time, adjusting grip, adjusting toss, adjusting stance, pushing herself to integrate the information as quickly as possible and then test it under competitive conditions. The hunger she brought to those sessions was visible to everyone watching. And the results were visible too. You could literally see her serve improve over the course of those training sessions. That is not something that happens easily. Serving is one of the most technically demanding and psychologically loaded aspects of tennis. It is the one moment in the sport where the ball is entirely under your control. No opponent to blame, no external factor to absorb the responsibility. When your serve is working, everything becomes possible. When it is not, everything becomes hard. The fact that Eala was producing visible improvement in a matter of days under Gauff's mentorship says everything about both of them, about Gauff's ability to observe and communicate at an elite level, and about Eala's ability to listen, adapt, and execute under pressure. Those sessions also gave observers a clear picture of the current relationship between where these two players stand in their respective journeys. Gauff, even in practice, even when the competitive pressure is technically off, looks powerful, sharp, and completely at ease operating at elite level. The gap in experience and development between her and Eala is still real. There is no point pretending otherwise, and Eala herself would be the first to acknowledge it. Gauff has won majors. She has competed in Grand Slam finals under conditions that would buckle most players, and she has found ways to close them out. That kind of experience puts distance between players that talent alone cannot immediately close. But here is the extraordinary part. Eala is closing that distance. The pace of her development over the past 18 months has been remarkable by any objective measure. She went from outside the top 100 to world number 40. She defeated Jasmine Paolini, a Grand Slam finalist and world-class clay court competitor, in a match that required her to play some of the best tennis of her career. She reached quarterfinals at one of the deepest WTA 1000 events of the early season. The gap is real, but the gap is shrinking, and it is shrinking fast. And the reason it is shrinking is not just talent, though the talent is undeniable. It is the learning environment. It is the mentorship. It is the example of having someone at the absolute peak of the sport say to you, with their time and their attention and their specific technical knowledge, that they believe in you enough to invest in your growth. What makes the Gauff-Eala dynamic so effective as a partnership goes beyond just the tennis, though. It is about contrast, two completely different but entirely complementary profiles. Gauff brings the American power game, the experience of winning majors, the mental toughness forged in the furnace of big match situations that only the most grueling professional circuit in the world can produce. She brings tactical wisdom earned through thousands of hours of competing against opponents who were always trying to find her weakness and exploit it. She brings a composure under pressure that has been built through trial, error, and eventually victory. Eala brings something that is just as valuable in its own way. She brings freshness, the energy of someone who has not yet reached the ceiling of what she can become, who still experiences every major opportunity as the gift that it genuinely is. She brings hunger that has not yet been dulled by the accumulation of trophies and expectations. She brings an infectious willingness to learn that makes the people around her better, more enthusiastic, more willing to share what they know, because giving knowledge to someone who uses it this well is one of the great joys of sport. When you combine these two profiles, something genuinely magical happens. You get an environment where growth is not just possible, it is inevitable, where the experienced player is reminded why she started and the developing player is shown exactly where she is going. And beyond all of the tactical analysis, beyond the stats and the rankings and the implications for the shifting balance of power in women's tennis, what is truly remarkable about everything happening between these two right now is how genuine it is. When you watch Gauff and Eala together, between drills, in press conferences, in the joint video they made for their fans, in the casual way they talk about each other in interviews, you see two people who actually enjoy each other, who find something in each other that is worth investing in. The laughter between them is real. The mutual admiration is real. The warmth is real. And in a sport that can be profoundly isolating, where every week you are traveling to a new city, competing alone against an opponent who is trying with everything they have to take something from you, that kind of genuine human connection is rarer and more precious than any trophy. Tennis is, at its core, one against one. There is no team. There is no one to share the weight of a bad day or celebrate with in the middle of a good one. There is just you and a racket and a court and an opponent who did not come to be friendly. That loneliness is part of what makes the sport great. The clarity of it, the purity of it, the way it strips everything down to the essential question of who you are when everything is on the line. But it is also part of what makes the moments of genuine connection so powerful when they happen. When a Gauff reaches across that individual isolation and offers knowledge and friendship to an Eala, when an Eala's fans reach across the boundary of their own player's match and pour their energy into a Gauff, something extraordinary happens. The sport reveals another dimension of itself entirely. The dimension where community is possible even in competition, where generosity and ambition can coexist, where the rising tide genuinely lifts all boats. Sabalenka, watching all of this, is experiencing something that no trophy has prepared her for. The loneliness of being the dominant force in a sport where the challengers are building something together. The regret of perhaps not having invested enough in those kinds of bonds, those kinds of connections, when the opportunity existed. The landscape is shifting. The challengers are not coming individually anymore. They are coming collectively, backed by fan bases that spill over from one player to another, creating a continuous wave of support that fills every stadium they walk into. Meanwhile, Gauff and Eala are building a legacy that extends beyond anything that can be measured in rankings points or prize money. They are building the story that this era of women's tennis will eventually be remembered for. Not just the results, but the way they carried themselves through them, the way they supported each other, the way they brought their fans into something bigger than any individual match, the way they made the sport feel like a place where joy and friendship and fierce competition can all exist in the same space at the same time.